The second ingredient I want to talk about is Boswellia, or frankincense, right? Commonly known, like most people remember, the gift that was taken to baby Jesus from the Magi was frankincense, myrrh, and gold. I write about this heavily in my book. And then, many years ago, when I brought this up at certain conferences, actually, I was interviewed by a Christian television network maybe 15 years ago, and I kind of brought back this idea of like, well, guess what? Frankincense, Boswellia, and the whole country and three manufacturers have been selling out ever since because they keep on replaying the Christmas special that I was interviewed in. But the interesting thing is that we have to understand where this is coming from, right? These are Ayurvedic medicines that we've been using for thousands of years. There's now over 700 publications, again, mainly in the past 5 years. And I think a year ago was about 600. So there's about 100 more since I spoke about this last time. Now, the benefits, again, lowers the inflammation. I won't go into all the detail. That's in my book. That's in my previous lectures. And it has wonderful effects on most tissues, from joints to the breast to the bone and colon and lung and prostate and muscle tissue. And so there's a benefit of the frankincense. In fact, even when we burn frankincense, like, let me go back here, when we burn frankincense, say like in church, there's a reason. The studies will show that's when they burn the frankincense, that gum resident, it actually will convert the brain on a PET scan or a functional MRI. It turns on the place of the brain where we feel the most calm and safe. And that's why they use it in church, because that was a place to feel safe, like a sanctuary that you can go. So it's very interesting. There's actually a historical benefit of actually emotional and physiological to be in a place of feeling calm when you're actually breathing the smoke. Now, the problems with Boswellia supplements is that most contain just plain Boswellia. It's not, Boswellia, when we look at plant medicines, the challenge is, and that's why most people are not trained in herbal medicine, but herbalists will always be talking about this, right? Those people who specialize in herbalized medicine, they understand, or we're trained and we're taught that. Like, there's different parts of the plant, right? You got the roots, you got the bark, you got the gum, you got the flower, you got the leaves, you got the berries of all these different plants. And when they say this is the plant, you don't know what it's coming from. And so a lot of companies will say, well, it's Boswellia, but what part of the tree are we talking about? It's actually the gum resin is what we're looking for. And most people are taking other parts of the plant. So it's not a mislabel. Partly it is. So true, it's Boswellia, it's the plant, but it's not the right part of the plant. Just like we can say coffee. Well, is it the coffee berry, or is it the coffee of the tree, or the coffee bark and a coffee leaf, for example? There's other parts of that we can actually just say it is and not be fully lying, but in a way they are giving you a little bit of mistruth. Most of the Boswellia is not standardized. It only contains boswellic acids. And if you just raise boswellic acids, it took us 6 years when we were doing the R&D for Bosmeric, and we would take the parts of the Boswellia, AKBBA, boswellic acids, and I'll talk about this polysol in a second, but it took us 6 years because we would increase the dose and the percentage of those numbers. And so we say, hey, let's turn up to 90%. Let's give me 90% AKBBA, which is a component that's kind of like the curcumin of the Boswellia. Let's turn it to 90%. Because it sounds good, right? More is better. But we found out in the studies that it didn't have a stronger effect. We're trying to mimic biologically what nature has given us. And so over time, we were raising and lowering each of these ratios, like all three up, some of them down, some of them up. It took a long time. And that's why when you look at Bosmeric and you say, why do they have this specific ratio? Why is this high, but this is a little bit lower? Because physiologically, it has the better effect. Unlike what we would come to start with. We thought like, hey, let's turn I play music. Most people know that they're calling me the rock doc, right? So side of the curcumin, I'm the rock doc. So everybody likes to say, well, let's turn it up to 10. It's the music thing on it, turn up the amp. But turning everything up does not necessarily mean better outcome. And so the goal is understanding the fine nuance of plant medicines and also response to plant medicines. Now, a lot of people will also take essential oils and marketing companies talking about Boswellia. I won't get into the data on that, but most of those things are adulterated. Most of them are taking data of the other part. The essential oil is a different part of Boswellia than the gum resin that we're using in our studies, or the most studies that are showing the benefits of the product. Not saying that an essential oil is bad to use, but you can't claim that the physiological benefits when it's actually has different physiological constituents. So we use the gold standard. It's called Boswellia PS. Now, why we add the PS? Because we're the only company now that has also the polysol aspect. The polysol has a water-soluble fraction that provides us this 20-minute onset of action, meaning you take it within 20 minutes, bam, headache goes down. inflammation goes down, right? So no other company right now worldwide has the polysol fraction or the AKBBA or the boswellic acids at that optimized ratio to actually enhance the overall anti-inflammatory effect of Boswellia. And again, we are able to provide it. And again, we do have GRAS status. Now, ginger is my third ingredient. I love ginger. People should be eating ginger. It's a great food additive. It makes everything taste better. There's now 5,100 publications we've been using in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, and it's used throughout the world in culinary foods. Ginger has wonderful benefits as an anti-inflammatory, lowers inflammation directly, has a lot of benefits on the gut, right? Lowers nausea, lowers vomiting. It also helps prevent a lot of types of cancer and even chemo and radiative protective properties. So it's very helpful when people are going through cancer treatments to be consuming like ginger tea, again, organic. It's a rhizome. It's heavily sprayed, right? And it basically has been studied in most of the tissues as well. But the problem with the ginger supplements out there is it's just ginger root powder, right? So anytime you see ginger, 500 milligrams, ginger, 250 milligrams, or 1,000 milligrams of ginger, it's just ginger root powder, which is heavily sprayed. It's not organic, number one. They're not certified pesticide-free. And then again, they're irradiated, so it's losing its effectiveness. What we want to look at, what is the curcuminoids? What's the AKBBA of ginger? Like what is the Superman Wonder Woman of ginger is what they call gingerols. Gingerols are the component that makes the ginger more effective, right? It's like the curcuminoids of it. Now, if you're standardizing, if you got a product that says just ginger extract, 500 milligrams, ginger, 200 milligrams, right? Then it's not worth taking. Just eat some ginger, because literally what you can buy would be a cleaner product, meaning all organic, and it won't be irradiated, it won't be full of pesticides, and would actually have some better biological activity. Now, here's the kicker. Ginger, proteolytic enzymes, bromelain, papain, nattokinase. These are all different ingredients that you will hear that are given in joint formulas, right? Ginger, proteolytic enzymes, nattokinase, bromelain, papain, for example, okay? So why I'm saying this, because when you put those ingredients in a capsule, it will degrade the potency of all the other ingredients in the capsule over time. So this is the whole market. Every product has ginger in it almost, right? Because we know the benefits of ginger. Everybody kind of understands it's a common thing. It has little side effects. So it's great. We can take it. The problem is, as that capsule has been manufactured, as it sits in that bottle, by the time that person actually gets it, that potency has been degraded. It lowers over time, so it's less effective. And so we will then show you how we overcome that problem. We use gingerol at 20% in Bosmeric. It's the highest available worldwide. Most, if you find a product out there that says ginger extract and it says 5% gingerols, fantastic. You actually got a better product than most out there. But we go even further than that. Ours has the highest amount. Usually the highest amount you can find is 11% in Europe. We use 20% gingerols. Why? Because we're driving down that inflammatory response. And the interesting thing is it has gastroprotective effects as well. So a lot of people think that ginger is really spicy or pungent. It does have a little bit of a heat, but the heat is not something that will cause an ulcer. In fact, it's gastroprotective. It actually helps prevent the GI tract from having ulcers. That's why we like to drink ginger tea. Even for chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, FDA has approved drinking ginger tea, right? So this is really important. Again, our ginger extract certified pesticide-free and free of irradiation. Then I want to get into black pepper. Now, black pepper is used in almost every culture around the world. It's almost on every single table in every restaurant, right? Now there's 2,500 studies published. It's called piperine. That's the molecule here. And all the other slides, I was always putting the chemistry molecule for those who are interested in that. But pepper is interesting because a lot of people think of it as a spice. But, you know, I'm doing a series that you might have seen on YouTube called Healing Spices, and I'm covering the 4 spices every month on the benefits of spices. And black pepper is interesting because it is also a natural anti-inflammatory. We all understood black pepper and bioperine, which is the one form that we use that's patented, as it increases nutrient absorption, okay? Meaning that when you take black pepper, it increases the absorption of other ingredients. That's why there's black pepper on your table. You crush the black pepper, not only to improve the taste of the food, right? But actually it helps the digestion and the body absorb all those nutrients. But what we didn't really truly understand until the last 10, 15 years is that it has strong anti-inflammatory effects. It lowers all sorts of things, helps with cancer, lowering NF-kappa beta, COX-2 enzymes, again, like the NSAIDs do without the side effects, and even assists with cognitive brain functioning. Even sniffing in some of these oils actually can improve cognitive functioning as well. Has a great antioxidant effect as well. So the problem with black pepper supplements is that most products, again, are just black pepper powder, just like going to the store and buying, the generic spice. It's not standardized to 95% piperine. And when it's not the bioperine, then again, like the curcuminoids, they can say it's 95%, but it's not guaranteed to have any of those compounds at that ratio, right? They're not pesticide free, they're irradiated. And there's a big myth or a misnomer that's been perpetrated by companies who don't want to use black pepper, or because if they don't add one more ingredient, then they have more product margin. So there's a big myth that's been pushed out there that, oh my God, black pepper can cause problems. It can interact with your medications, and it can cause liver issues, and that's all myth. Okay, because the FDA is not pulling off black pepper of your table. They're not pulling off the store for you to put all you want. People are having peppercorn and pepper encrusted foods every day. They're cooking with pepper and all these spices. And so that's just, always step back when you hear like, oh my God, this is really dangerous. I'm like, but you just ate it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner on some level for the last 50 years. You haven't had a problem with that. So be careful of that kind of misguidance of sometimes dangerous aspects of foods. Those are just people that are trying to do scare tactics to try to sell you a cheaper form of, say, curcumin or Boswellia. So we use the gold standard. That's bioperine. It's standardized to 95% piperine. Again, bioperine is the name. And again, it's the most clinically studied form. In the studies using bioperine, it increases the other ingredients 30 to 2,000%. So curcumin is increased 2,000%. Only if you're using C3 complex and only if you're using bioperine. No one else can say that. Now, you'll see everybody say increasing. If you go online now, you say increases, because they'll just put generic black pepper and generic turmeric saying it's curcumin, and say increases up to 200%. That's absolutely false. They cannot make that claim, right? Because they can't prove it. Everybody's trying to steal other people's data. And again, the internet cannot regulate. But in the studies using actually bioperine, and when we use it in our product, Bosmeric, we can actually show 30% up to 2,000% of the other ingredients. Again, certified pesticide-free, non-irradiated, and also the only black pepper extract patented that has GRAS status. Now, Bosmeric is our flagship formula. It is our go-to to replace the ibuprofen. It has all four ingredients I talked about: curcumin, C3 complex, boswellia, PS, ginger, and the black pepper bioperine. But at the clinical doses, and more importantly, at specific ratios of even the Boswellia and the Gingerols that have a stronger effect. It's actually important to understand that we putting this together, I mean, when I say we, this is me, a bunch of scientists, and again, 6 years of R&D. Now, we've had this product out for 12 years. We have tens of thousands of patients who have taken this worldwide with success, and we continue to grow the market. We keep also getting copied, and people are trying to, do pseudo products on the market, but they don't have the same clinical efficacy. They might be cheaper, but to me, cheap is not necessarily good, right? You can get a dollar value meal. It's not real food. Right. So there's a certain aspect of, if you want safety, efficacy, potency, and purity, you got to be looking at what the product or what you're delivering. But what we have analyzed is, instead of just giving a single of each of these, which a lot of companies will say, hey, I just get curcumin C3 complex, or I just get the Boswellia PS, or I just get ginger, or everybody will add black pepper to them, is that we have something called synergy. So now we understand that when we add those four ingredients together, right? And we actually did studies where we actually had 1 and 2, and then this one with that one. So we kind of played this ABCD game of mixing. When you put them all four together, there was even a higher benefit, right? So then actually you can cut down on some of the dosing. So you don't have to take large doses as synergy. Once you understand plant medicines, you can understand that's why Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine, they always use formula. They weren't always just like, here's one ingredient, like pharmaceuticals. Here's one ingredient, here's a large dose of it. They're always looking at, how can we balance something that we can lower the potential issue of tolerance and also lower potential issue of side effect, and something that you can continue to take daily, continuously, without, again, burning it out or causing a problem. So when we look at Bosmeric, which is this, it's a bilayered caplet. versus a capsule, which everybody else uses. Now, why would that be important? It's the following. This is where technology and science and pharmacology is important. We have two layers, and this is kind of the science. And a lot of people are like, I don't understand why you're talking about this. This is so important because when you put the right ingredients, it's a bilayer. There's two layers, and even of that, it's layered. Is because we need to have this 20-minute onset of action when you take it. Part of it's going to be released, and then we also have the sustained release action over 8 hours. Now, again, with the ginger, bromelain, papain, nattokinase, proteolytic enzymes, when those companies put it in a capsule, that capsule, again, will degrade the potency of those ingredients over time. Okay, so that the potency is not retaining, meaning the efficacy, how well it works as it sits on the shelf for several months from manufacturing to the time it's distributed, by the time it goes to the warehouse, by the time you order online to be delivered to your house, it is lowering every week. Ours is being kept 100% of the potency, of the purity. We're providing safety and efficacy at the time that you take it, whenever you take it. And so if it's sitting in the bottle, doesn't matter. Once you take it, we're getting 100%. That's when we look at clinical efficacy. And that's why we have the flagship of lowering inflammation. Now, when we talk about this kind of fast acting, long lasting, a lot of companies will say, ours is fast, ours works long. That's not true. What we look at is this. There's what we call a therapeutic range in the body that the body gets the best physiological benefit. And then we look at, the concentration, and we look at time over hours. And what we've provided that when we look at capsule products, which is every other product on the market that has turmeric, Boswellia, turmeric, curcumin, Boswellia, ginger, black pepper, combinations of those in between, is that when they eat it here in this gray color here, it goes up in the absorption, right? So it starts to peak within about an hour, and then it goes up, and then it kind of comes down. By actually the third hour, we've lost the efficacy, meaning like we don't notice any difference. And that's why when people take those other capsule products, they have to take tons and tons. And when people even took the right product, say they took C3 complex in the studies by itself, say for cancer or chronic disease, the people were taking grams and grams of that. Why? It's because they were doing this. They're going up, down, up, down, up, down. Then you're just taking a lot of product. Not dangerous, just quite expensive and inconvenient. What we now can do is this, that when we have that Boswellia and PS, it actually peaks in the blood here, starts to dissolve, starts to break up. You have a 20-minute onset of action due to the water-soluble aspect, again, lowering the inflammatory response. And then, since it's bilayered, no other company has a bilayered sustained release technology right now. It's actually a pharmaceutical technology, is that it then lasts over 8 hours in the therapeutic range. So you want to take something, have that immediate release, but you also want to be like, I don't have to keep taking it over and over and over again. And that's what we can do with Bosmeric SR. It's easy to swallow. It's a caplet. So it's not a tablet, it's smaller, and it's not a capsule. Why? Because we want to prevent and we want to retain the potency, and we want to prevent degradation that occurs in capsules. So 1 to 2 twice a day. Again, even people with an acute migraine headache can take 3 at one time, for example, or back pain, no problems. And one of the most important things is purity and safety. So ours is non-irradiated, it's gluten-free, soy-free, has no pesticides, no synthetic molecules. And in fact, again, remember, 43% of all turmeric curcumin now are made from synthetic molecules. We have no nanoparticles, and we are tested for having no lead or other types of heavy metals. Now, we've done such a good job over the last 12 years. Now, other companies, now again, I'm just a small doc here in Albuquerque with my company doing integrative medicine, but even large corporations are now coming and saying, hey, can we hijack my trademark name and sell it, right? So people will click on this and actually be taken to a generic synthetic curcumin or a curcumin of some form that may not have as much data, maybe again, 20 studies, maybe white papers, maybe again in cell culture. But this is how we have to be careful. Like when it's very difficult as a true clinician to expand in the market when even Amazon, for example, they won't allow me even to post the study on the 43% synthetic curcuminoids in my A-listing content. Why? Because they make 30% of all the product that they're selling in the category. So what happens is patients think like, oh, if I go to an online retailer, I'm getting a good source or it's a free market. But actually what they don't realize it's being skewed because nobody wants to shake the boat. Nobody wants to say, hey, if everybody's getting a little bit of less of potency or purity or safety and they're not efficacious, they don't care. Everybody's still making money. And we want to provide that benefit to you. And I want to just kind of, before we end right now, I want to talk about that, when we just last year and the year before, we actually have two of these. I was only able to pull up one today, but during the pandemic, I gave my lecture on 2021 from COVID to cancer, how to lower inflammation naturally. And, we talked about the pathways. We talked about, that's also somewhat in my book about pathways of inflammation and other viruses. But when COVID hit, a lot of people are like, well, what can I do? I'm going to take the vaccine. I'm going to do other things. I'm going to eat plant-based, lowering 76% of inflammatory complications just by the diet, which did better than the third vaccine. So like just lowering your inflammation by eating better is better for you, how to get vitamin D up and all. But we did something even more. We actually have double-blinded randomized control clinical trials. We actually now have two. This is just one of them. And we're using the curcumin C3 complex and the bioprine. And it did very well for mild, moderate, severe symptoms. And it's used and now as adjunctive therapy for COVID in India. So this is something that, when people say, well, put it to the test, let's take a look. Well, we have put it to test. This is the gold standard, right? So the idea is that we can take natural ingredients and use it scientifically and do the right appropriate manufacturing. The problem is most people in the marketplace don't want to do that, but we do. And that's what we can provide to you. So my goal for you, my recommendation is to take action now before you take ibuprofen. Try this instead. You can go to bosmeric.com and learn more about this ingredients, how it compares to other products, how it works. And also you can go to Sanjevani Store, which is also our online store for our clinic. You don't have to be a patient, but I'm glad to see patients from anywhere around the world. We do online health coaching and consultations, and we can send laboratory kits and testing, and we do everything from afar, but we've been helping people for chronic inflammatory aspects for over 2 decades very successfully. And hopefully you can also check out my book, An Inflammation Nation, so that you can get a better understanding of how to prevent and treat all diseases through diet, lifestyle, and the use of natural anti-inflammatories, including Bosmeric. And I want to thank you all for taking your time this morning to listen to my lecture.
The next part of our session here is going to be question and answer. And in order to do that, I just want to let everybody know exactly how that we're going to do that. So, but before we begin the Q&A, I know you just mentioned your book. Do you want to show? I don't know if you have access to your website, or let us know exactly where to find you on social media and where to get your books at.
Yeah, so you can get our book at sanjevanistore.com, SANJEVANI store.com. You can get the book there and get a signed copy from myself if you like, or you can go to Amazon and purchase it on Amazon, or you can even get on Audible. It's 14 hours professionally read. So for those people who like to commute or working out and they want to listen to like how to change their lifestyle and not just what I talked about today, but we talk about all sorts of things from food allergies, microbiome, environmental stress, other kind of technologies and other lifestyle practices. Everything we talk about is evidence-based. So as everybody will know, and then what I'm really kind of critical about the industry is that, we like to put it to the test, and we do. We like to demonstrate the use of natural therapies from whatever culture it is, and then encourage people to then incorporate them into their lifestyle. The challenges in this natural world, as you know, and in the internet and social media marketing, is that everybody's an expert and everybody's selling something. But at the end of the day, the data will fall short on the efficacy and safety of those things. And then nobody, since they're not really seeing patients at the end of the day, then there's no kind of follow-up of how they actually did. As a practitioner doing this for 23 years, now we can see like how wonderful these lifestyle changes are, how changing your diet to plant-based is important, and how using some natural therapies can also augment that and accelerate that healing.
Thank you for that. So we're going to do, for the Q&A, we're going to accept questions from the audience. I'm going to put everyone's hand down right now because I think we have one from last time. So if you have a question, please raise your hand in Zoom. We're not going to take questions directly from the chat. So if you'd like to ask a question, you should go to the bottom of your Zoom, and second from the left, you will see a reactions button. You're going to click on the reactions button. And from that pop-up, you will select raise hand, and I will answer, or excuse me, I will open up the mic for you in the order in which I received them. Once I do, I will ask you to state your name, where you're from, and state your question. We will, in order to move things quickly along, we ask that your questions are brief and on topic. Once you ask the question, we will then mute you in order to give everyone a chance to get their question answered. We won't be taking follow-up questions. So, however, if you do want to ask a follow-up question, you can, after I put your hand down, you can go ahead and put your hand back up. And if we have time, we can ask a question. You can ask a question again. So let me ask you you mentioned when you just right about now, you mentioned about environmental factors contributing to inflammation. And I'm going to ask you more about food factors, but what kind of environmental factors should we be avoiding in our everyday life?
So we always want to be eating, as I say, cleaner, right? But so getting more organic, particularly when we talk about plant foods, I always like to start with my patients with kind of I'm a risk reductionist, not a perfectionist. So I start with first, like, go to environmental working group, look at the dirty dozen. Those foods must be organic because those are the top 12 most heavily sprayed foods right now. I'm not talking about animal protein because animal protein is an older problem altogether, right? Even if it's clean, right? But when you want to look at, like, because most people are on a budget, most people, with the economy and inflation, it's like, so we got to be tight with our money. What can we get our biggest return on investment? We'll eat the foods that are the most heavily sprayed. Those ones must be organic. So pay a little 10 cents per pound for that on the environmental working group, the dirty dozen. You can look that up. Now, other things we want to look at, the second thing that we see with most of our patients, since we do testing for that, is we look at toxic elements. And those are things like heavy metals. And unfortunately, right now, you don't have to live in Flint, Michigan to have a toxicity. Most people, when we look at, again, you go to environmental working group, EWG water database, these are all nonprofit companies, and you just put in your zip code and it will tell you, like, these are the chemicals that are coming from your municipal water, right? Now, municipal is safe, meaning you won't get diarrhea, you won't get E. coli, it's gone through the filtration, but they can't filter out all the prescription drugs and chemicals. Like here in Albuquerque, we have 525 or 585 times more arsenic in our water. We have 3.8 times more uranium in our water. This is all, every place that you live have industry, environmental, some of it's natural, some of it's man-made. But these are the chemicals that come back into our environment. Those chemicals can potentially cause cancer, cause inflammation, neurodegenerative disease, immunosuppression, et cetera. So we look at also cleaning water, right? So, like, making sure that you have like a reverse osmosis or gravity filter. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about wellness technologies. So where do you go further than that? So once you filtered your water, how do you make the water then healthier? Right? People are like, what is that? Well, wait for tomorrow's lecture. But those are other things. So cleaning up your environment, body products. I have a whole section in my book. The average person's like 13 to 16 products a day, from, body sprays and lotions and lipsticks and all stuff. That's another chemical exposure that, people will be surprised, particularly women will be surprised how much stuff is in their lipstick and their makeup. And as you can see, there's a trend now. People are trying to get cleaner products, less ingredients. It shouldn't have, just like our food, shouldn't have 50 ingredients that we cannot pronounce. As a PhD chemist, we don't really know. It's like, why is this putting on, my skin's your largest organ. Why am I putting this stuff on my body? So we always want to look at those things. And lastly, in my book, I spend a good time about is how do we look at the environmental stress of inflammation, right? The emotional inflammation. So we'll talk about meditation, and we talk about mindfulness, and we talk about, other types of practice like yoga and even community. How do we also lower the inflammation from the burden of the stress that everybody's been going through the last couple of years?
So just real quickly, what was that website again for the water, your municipal water?
Environmental working group. Just type EWG water database in the search engine, and people can look up that. And it's really important because one thing you'll notice that most people, not everybody, but most people have some kind of carbon filter in their house, right? They have the little thing that goes in the back of the refrigerator, the little thing goes, or the little thing on the bottom of the carbon filter on the bottom of the refrigerator, or they have like I don't want to say brand names, but like a Brita or a Pure, for example. Those are carbon filters. And if you look at on the data on your screen from what you put in, you'll see that sometimes that carbon filter will filter out everything that is toxic, that was high in that person's area from their municipal. And you'll also see that on some places it's not. So they're thinking that it's filtering all this stuff and it's taking out, say, maybe lead or mercury, but it's not taking out the uranium or the arsenic or the tungsten or something else that might be coming in, or platinum, for example. And so then I'll show you, like, reverse osmosis or a gravity filter will do that. They're not telling you which one to get. They're just telling you which technology, in terms of filtration. And that's key because you really want to be buying the one that is for you, not just necessarily that the internet influencer or the store has it on sale. You want to be like, and if whichever the cheapest that does it, then that's fine for me. Like I have no issue with that. To me, it's like a lot of people are buying filters because they're said, hey, it's supposed to be cleared. Like someone says it clears everything, but then when they actually look at it, it's like, no, when we test them and if they're toxic or elevated, that means it's still sneaking in. The other aspect I have to remind everybody, because there's a study just came out about 4 months ago showing that some people with filters are getting higher toxicity. And the reason being is because they don't change their filters frequently, right? Like during the pandemic, we forgot to do a lot of things, of the stress and all. And a lot of people forget because, now they have like apps or other ways to kind of notify people like, hey, you need to change the filter. But what happens, the filter will build up all the toxins because it's filtering it. But then if they don't change the filter appropriately on time, then it starts to spill. And then people can then actually get a higher toxicity because they just built it up and then starts to dump. So make sure whatever filter you get, make sure that you put your regular thing on your calendar to go back and change it. I have to have my little post-it notes in my little thing on my phone to remind me, because it's key. Like you want to clean water. We don't want to have clean water for 6 months and then start dumping and then all of a sudden get toxicity.
I literally just did that yesterday. I put it in my calendar.
Yeah. So you have to do that because these are things that, because, they're in the garage or under the sink or whatever, we kind of have a tendency to forget it. When I talk about tomorrow, the wellness technologies, that's going to be important because that's going to taking your health to another level of energizing the water, structuring the water, taking the trauma out of the water. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, listen to tomorrow's lecture.
Well, great. I look forward to it myself. So when people think about water, they think about drinking water. You mentioned that skin is the largest organ in the body. Mm-hmm. How about when you're taking a shower, right? How important is it to also filter that water? So that's a challenge, right? Because I want to first look at the water that someone drinks. Okay. Right, because we're actually internally getting the exposure. Yeah, yes, it's true, right? So I always first start with my patients like, get something that you're drinking first is your priority. Now, if you have the availability, then later on you want to get like a whole house filter, right? But even of the whole house filters, you should get your water tested, which you can do because there's different filters for that. When a patient consults with me, then I'll say, here are the different brands that we use. I have nothing in relationship to them, but like these are the ones that you can get at the store and all. But some of them are going to be taking out more like iron if you have high iron. Or some of these, there's different sediments that are higher in certain areas that you want to make sure, again, even on that, since it's going to be more expensive because they're larger units, the one that we have in our house lasts about 8 to 10 years, right? But we have like higher iron content in the area of Albuquerque that we live at. So we get little red stains, on the sink. So we had to put that in, right? And also that would be too much toxicity drinking 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. But every city, every town is different. The other thing that people need to know is that also a lot of Americans, a lot of my patients also, when they live rurally, they use well water. But we have to have well water tested because a lot of times they say, oh, it was just tested, but it was just tested to make sure that it doesn't have bacteria. They're not testing for all these other things, just like municipal is not cleaning it all out. So a lot of people say, oh, I got you need to have it tested for all these other types of contaminants, especially if we do a testing and it comes back positive, then the number one source is that.